The Oregon coast in the fall of 1958 was a place of wild beauty and brooding mystery. Fog, thick as a shroud, often clung to the rugged cliffs, swallowing the screams of gulls and the roar of the Pacific. Cape Haven, a small, isolated town nestled between the crashing waves and ancient, whispering forests, was no stranger to the strange. Shipwrecks often coughed up secrets onto its desolate beaches, but nothing like what young Eleanor Ellie Vance found that misty October morning. Ellie, an aspiring crime reporter with a restless spirit, was out for her usual dawn walk, hoping to shake off the lingering scent of stale cigarette smoke from the previous night's newsroom. The air was cold, damp, and tasted of salt and pine. As the fog reluctantly began to lift, revealing the vast, churning expanse of the ocean, her gaze fell upon a figure on the sand. He lay perfectly still, stretched out as if in repose, his feet pointed towards the distant, churning tide. He was well dressed, a sharp suit that seemed utterly out of place on this wild, remote beach. His hands were clasped gently over his chest, almost as if he were asleep, dreaming. What struck Ellie most was his face, serene, almost peaceful, utterly devoid of fear or pain. It was the face of a man who had simply ended. But this wasn't a peaceful death. As Sheriff Ben Carter, a man whose pragmatism was as thick as the Cape Haven fog, arrived with his deputies, the initial oddities began to mount. The man had no wallet, no identification. Every single label had been meticulously cut out of his expensive clothing, leaving no clue to his origin. A single unlit cigarette, perfectly intact, rested between his fingers, as if he'd just set it down. There were no footprints leading to or from the body, beyond Ellie's own. And though rigor mortis was clearly setting in, his skin was unusually cool, almost as if he'd been preserved by the ocean's chill, yet there were no signs of drowning. Sheriff Carter, initially dismissive, mumbling about some poor soul washed up, grew increasingly uneasy. He was a man who believed in facts and logic and solving cases with hard evidence. But this man, the stranger on the sand, offered no facts, no logic, only a profound and growing enigma. Ellie, watching the scene unfold, felt a prickle of intuition, a reporter's instinct screaming that this was no ordinary tragedy. This was a story, yes, but it was also a puzzle, perfectly laid out on the desolate beach, waiting for someone to try and put its impossible pieces together. The peaceful expression on the dead man's face seemed to mock them, a silent challenge from beyond the grave. The Somerton enigma had just begun. The initial autopsy on the stranger from Cape Haven Beach only deepened the profound enigma surrounding his death. Dr. Albright, the county coroner, was a man of science, accustomed to clear-cut causes of demise. But the body of the Somerton Man defied all logic. There was no trauma, no signs of struggle, no obvious poisons detected, even after extensive testing. His internal organs, however, showed signs of an incredibly rapid and inexplicable shutdown, as if his body had simply suddenly ceased all function. It was a medical mystery that left even the seasoned coroner scratching his head. Sheriff Ben Carter, growing increasingly frustrated, ordered the man's belongings thoroughly examined. His expensive, meticulously tailored suit yielded nothing. Every label had been cleanly cut out, leaving no manufacturer's mark, no clue to its origin. His pockets were empty, save for the unlit cigarette. It was an impossible scenario, a man seemingly appearing from nowhere, perfectly dressed, only to die without a trace of his identity. Days later, during a final, exhaustive examination of the clothing, a tiny, almost invisible pocket was discovered. It was expertly sewn into the lining of the man's trousers, just beneath the waistband. Inside, carefully rolled and tucked away, was a small slip of paper. On it, a single cryptic Latin phrase, veritas abscondita. Ellie Vance, the young reporter, was there when Sheriff Carter unfolded the paper. "Hidden truth," she murmured, translating the Latin phrase, her eyes widening. This wasn't just a dead man. This was a puzzle, a challenge. The seemingly random phrase, so carefully concealed, transformed the case from a perplexing fatality into a profound, encrypted mystery. Weeks crawled by, and the Somerton Man remained unidentified, his death a baffling void. Then a new lead, as unexpected as it was significant. An unclaimed, locked leather suitcase was found at a local train station locker, the tag matching the time and description of the train that would have arrived in Cape Haven the morning the body was found. Its contents were equally anonymous, yet meticulously organized. neatly folded, labelless clothing, a fresh shaving kit, and a small leather-bound book of obscure 16th century poetry. But several pages had been cleanly torn out from the back. Ellie, now utterly fixated on the case, saw the connection immediately. She remembered the hidden veritas abscondita phrase, the bizarre medical findings, the sheer unlikelihood of a man simply appearing and dying without a past. She felt a magnetic pull towards the mystery, sensing a story far deeper and stranger than any simple drowning or unexplained death. She began to connect fragments of local Cape Haven folklore, old tales of the rugged coastline and its ancient secrets, to the unsettling arrival of this stranger with no identity. The puzzle pieces were there, scattered and seemingly unrelated. But Ellie had a growing suspicion that if she could just find the right way to connect them, they would reveal a truth far more chilling than anyone could imagine. The Somerton enigma was no longer just a cold case. It was an invitation into a world of hidden truths. The small slip of paper bearing Veritas Abscondita had transformed the Somerton Man from an unidentified body into a profound and cryptic challenge. Sheriff Ben Carter, his frustration mounting with each passing day, consulted every cryptographer and codebreaker he could find. But the brevity of the phrase, its obscure origin, defied all conventional attempts at decryption. It was a lock without a key, a message without context. Ellie Vance, however, found her context in the unclaimed suitcase and its peculiar contents. The antique poetry book, with its torn-out pages, became her obsession. She spent countless hours in the musty archives of the local library, sifting through ancient literature and forgotten texts. Her perseverance paid off. She located a complete edition of the rare book and meticulously identified the missing pages. The words on those torn pages, when strung together, didn't form a coherent poem, but a series of seemingly random numbers and fragmented Latin phrases hinting at constellations, sea charts, and ancient rituals. It was a code, far more complex than anything the sheriff's experts had considered. As Ellie delved deeper, her research led her down unexpected paths. She uncovered fragmented local legends of Cape Haven, whispered tales of ancient hidden pathways along the rugged coastline, of breaches in reality, and of secretive groups who passed down cryptic knowledge guarding these thresholds. Most dismissed these as fishermen's tales, the ramblings of the superstitious. But Ellie found an unlikely ally in Silas Blackwood, the reclusive elderly lighthouse keeper. His eyes, weathered by decades of watching the turbulent sea, held an ancient wisdom. He spoke sparingly, but when he did, his words resonated with an unnerving truth. He hinted at a deeper, mystical interpretation of the stars, the tides, and the very ground beneath their feet, linking them to a purpose far beyond navigation. The more Ellie unraveled, the more she felt watched. Her small apartment, usually her sanctuary, began to feel subtly disturbed. Notes were rearranged, a chair would be inexplicably moved, a window left ajar despite her firm closing. She dismissed it as fatigue, a hyperactive imagination, until one foggy evening. As she walked home from the library, she caught a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of the streetlights, tall and unnaturally still, observing her from a distance before melting back into the mist. It was a cold, sickening realization. The case of the Somerton Man wasn't just unsolved. It was actively being protected. Someone, or something, didn't want its secrets revealed. The labyrinth she was navigating was guarded, and the truth, it seemed, intended to remain hidden. Ellie Vance felt the chilling certainty that she was being watched, but the pursuit of the Somerton enigma had become an all-consuming fire within her. Her breakthroughs with the poetry book's fragmented numbers and Latin phrases consumed her every waking moment. The numbers, she discovered, weren't geographical coordinates. Instead, through countless hours of cross-referencing with ancient astronomical charts and tidal tables, she realized they correlated with precise celestial alignments and phases of the moon. A timetable. For what? Her path converged inevitably with Silas Blackwood, the reclusive lighthouse keeper. After weeks of subtle prodding and shared snippets of local lore, Silas finally revealed the lighthouse's true, ancient purpose. "It ain't just for ships, missy," Silas rasped, his voice as weathered as the sea-beaten cliffs. "My family's been keeping this light for generations, not just for the living. This here lighthouse, it's a sentinel." He explained that the lighthouse was built centuries ago by a forgotten, secretive order, not for practical navigation, but to mark and protect a hidden passage, a breach in reality itself, along the very coastline where the Somerton Man was found. It was a place where the veil between worlds thinned, a threshold to something ancient and inexplicable. The phrase veritas abscondita wasn't a warning, but a key phrase, a trigger perhaps, or a name for the very force guarding or utilizing this passage. Silas had seen glimpses, felt the tremors, heard the whispers. He was a guardian, bound by blood, to ensure the threshold remained closed. Driven by Silas's chilling revelations and the precise timing of the celestial alignments Ellie had deciphered, she convinced a reluctant Sheriff Carter to join her at the lighthouse on a specific, moonless night. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, the fog clinging low and heavy. As the exact moment of alignment approached, the very atmosphere around the lighthouse began to crack with unseen energy. Time seemed to flicker, jumping in disjointed moments. The air crackled with a frigid electrical charge. Then, through the swirling mist beyond the rocks, they saw them. Not clearly, not distinctly, but distorted figures, shimmering and shifting like heat haze on a summer road, their forms vaguely humanoid, their movements unnatural. Faint, otherworldly lights pulsed in the depths of the ocean, just beneath the surface. It was a breach, a fleeting glimpse into something that defied human understanding, a terrifying confirmation of Silas's words. In that terrifying moment, Ellie and Sheriff Carter understood the Somerton Man's role. He wasn't a victim of conventional foul play. He was a guardian, perhaps tasked with closing the threshold, or a gatekeeper who had failed his sacred duty. His unique internal shutdown, the bizarre lack of cause of death, wasn't simple poisoning or a heart attack. It was a self-inflicted ritualistic act, or a consequence of his direct interaction with the threshold itself, a final sacrifice to prevent something from crossing over fully. The Somerton Man was not just a body on the beach. He was a silent warning, a sentinel of a truth too terrifying to comprehend. The dawn broke over Cape Haven, but for Sheriff Ben Carter, the world had fundamentally shifted. He submitted his report on the Somerton Man, a dry, factual account of an unidentified body and an inexplicable death. The cryptographers still had no answer for veritas abscondita. The medical findings remained a baffling anomaly. Privately, Carter carried the unsettling visions from the lighthouse, the flickering reality, the distorted figures in the mist. But in his official capacity, such things couldn't exist. The case was quietly closed, filed away as an unsolved enigma. Ellie Vance, however, was irrevocably changed. The Somerton Man was no longer just a story. He was the first thread in a much larger, terrifying tapestry. She dedicated her career to uncovering other unsolved disappearances, cases whispered about in hushed tones, dismissed as folklore or simple tragedies. She sought patterns, connections to ancient texts, to strange land formations, to the whispers of marginalized communities. Her new hunt took her far beyond the mundane, into the realm of the truly inexplicable. Silas Blackwood, the old lighthouse keeper, remained at his post. His light continued to sweep across the treacherous coast, not just for ships, but as a silent, eternal warning. The stretch of coastline around the lighthouse remained eerily quiet, locals avoiding it as if sensing the thin veil that separated their world from another. They spoke of the Mawin's Gate, a place where the unwary could simply step into nothingness. The Somerton Man's identity, his purpose, his ultimate fate, remained an official mystery. But for Ellie Vance, Silas Blackwood, and now a haunted Sheriff Carter, the truth was far more chilling than any conventional crime. The man on the sand was a guardian, a sentinel for a threshold to an unseen dimension, a place where reality itself could unravel. His death was not an end, but perhaps a signal, a final desperate act to prevent something from fully crossing over. Years later, the lighthouse at Cape Haven still stands. The town has grown, tourists now flock to its picturesque beauty. But the old stories linger, hushed warnings on the lips of the true locals. On a particularly misty afternoon, a young tourist, captivated by the rugged beauty, ventures off the well-trodden paths near the lighthouse. They stumble upon a hidden crevice in the rocks, worn smooth by ancient tides. Tucked deep inside, they find a small, intricately carved wooden bird, identical to those found in other, distant, unexplained cases, and a weathered, damp slip of paper. On it, the faded words, Veritas Abscondita. As the mist rolls in from the churning Pacific, thick and disorienting, a faint, almost melodic hum seems to emanate from the very depths of the ocean, a low thrumming that vibrates through the rock. The young tourist feels a strange pulling sensation, a sudden, inexplicable cold. The Somerton Man's identity remains a profound enigma, but his death revealed a terrifying truth. Some passages between worlds are never truly closed, and some secrets are meant to remain hidden, forever guarded by an unseen threshold, waiting for its next unsuspecting visitor. The enigma continues, and the world remains perilously close to the beyond.